She walked into court in handcuffs, humiliated, alone, and wrongly accused. They called her aggressive. They painted her as a threat. But what they didn't know was that her husband, a Delta Force operative, was already inside the building. And when the chief of police saluted him in front of the judge, the entire room remembered what power really looks like. This is not just a story of prejudice, it's a confrontation with systemic racism, racial bias, and the quiet brutality of selective enforcement. A black woman, stripped of dignity in a system that punishes presence over proof, faces not just an officer's abuse, but the weight of institutional injustice, HR stonewalling, and biased evaluations that target minorities under the guise of procedure. Set inside a courtroom, but echoing across professional environments and corporate accountability, this is a story about confronting discrimination where it hides, in uniforms, in policy, in silence. It's about reclaiming dignity, challenging power dynamics, and demanding equal treatment, not just in words, but in structure. Keep watching, because justice doesn't whisper. It walks in saluted. And if you've ever faced prejudice, been overlooked in leadership, or felt the weight of workplace racism, this story will leave you breathless and burning for true equality. The courtroom felt colder than it looked. Fluorescent light spilled across Nia Caldwell's face as she stood between two deputies, wrists cuffed tightly, dress slightly wrinkled from the holding cell bench she hadn't left in 15 hours. Her natural curls were frizzed at the edges, her lips pressed together in deliberate silence. Not submission, restraint. A white bailiff whispered to another as they passed her, just loud enough. She doesn't look like much trouble now. The second chuckled. They never do when they're caught. Nia said nothing. She never did when they wanted a reaction. 2 days earlier, Naya had pulled into a parking space at a local grocery store, the sun casting long shadows across the asphalt. As she stepped out, phone in hand, purse slung over one shoulder, she noticed the squad car already idling nearby. An officer, white, early 40s, lean, with a sharp jawline and mirrored sunglasses that never left her eyes, scribbled something on a pad. Nia squinted. "Excuse me, are you writing me a ticket?" Lieutenant Karen Wexler didn't even look up. "You parked across the patrol lane. That's restricted space." Nia turned back toward her car. The yellow line wasn't marked. No signage. There's no sign. And there's room for cars to pass. "You're blocking response access," Wexler replied flatly. "It's a safety violation." Nia stepped closer. "I'd like to see the code you're referencing. And your badge number, please." That made Wexler look up, slowly. "You want my badge number?" "Yes, for my records." Wexler took one slow step forward, voice now sharper. "Look, lady, you people love to pull the 'I know my rights' card. Doesn't change the fact you broke the law." Nia blinked. "You people?" The officer smirked. "I'm not playing word games with you. Take the ticket or I'll escalate." "I'm not refusing the ticket," Nia said evenly. "I'm requesting information I'm legally entitled to." "You're raising your voice." "No, I'm speaking clearly." Wexler reached for her radio. "Unit 23, I've got a non-compliant female. Might become combative." Nia took a step back. "Are you serious right now?" Wexler walked forward. "Hands on the vehicle. Now." "For asking a question?" "Resisting a lawful command," she said, already reaching for Nia's wrist. "You're not serious. I haven't—" "Ow!" Wexler yanked her arm roughly, pressing it behind her back. Nia stumbled forward against the warm metal of her own car hood. "I didn't resist." "Stop resisting," Wexler shouted loudly, theatrically. A bystander nearby hesitated, raised their phone, then slowly lowered it again. Once cuffed, Wexler leaned close to Nia's ear. "Should have just kept quiet. It's always the mouthy ones." Inside the squad car, the air conditioner blasted. Nia sat in silence, lips trembling slightly, but still no tears, just breath control. At the precinct, she was processed by a young white officer who wouldn't meet her eyes. "Name?" Nia Caldwell. Occupation? Licensed trauma therapist, owner of my own practice. Really, he muttered, glancing at her dark skin, her cuffed wrists. That so? During booking, Wexler reappeared, watching from the hallway with arms crossed. She kept talking like she was somebody, she said to a colleague. Always the educated ones who think they're above the rules. She yell at you? The officer asked. Nah, Wexler shrugged. Didn't have to. That tone? That's the kind that says I'll sue. Figured I'd shut it down early. Hours passed. A female officer handed Nia a bologna sandwich. You can eat or not. Doesn't matter. I wasn't given a call, Nia said quietly. Judge will see you in the morning. Till then, sit tight. They didn't check her ID thoroughly. No one Googled her credentials. No one asked if she had children, a partner, a life beyond the cell. She wasn't a person. She was an incident report. The judge entered. No one stood. The mood was casual. A couple of city attorneys sipped coffee. Nia's court-appointed lawyer shuffled papers. You're the resisting arrest lady, right? He asked without making eye contact. That's not what happened, she said. He nodded, not listening. We'll plead out. Disorderly conduct. Misdemeanor. Easy fine. No, Nia said. I want this dismissed. The young assistant prosecutor, fresh-faced, white, smug, leaned back in his chair. She escalated contact with a law enforcement officer, refused direction. Her tone was confrontational. Tone? Nia finally spoke louder. That's your metric now? Miss Caldwell, the judge interrupted. Let's maintain decorum. In the gallery, Wexler smirked and leaned back, arms folded. She's got a mouth on her, huh? Another officer next to her, older, black but silent, shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. The doors opened. Footsteps, heavy, calm, deliberate. The man who walked in wore dark jeans, a plain Henley shirt, and eyes that scanned with quiet threat. No badge, no uniform, but something colder, sharper. The room didn't recognize him at first, but the chief of police did. He rose from the back row. Major Caldwell. Then a crisp, solemn salute. Wexler turned slowly. The color drained from her face. The prosecutor paused. Sorry, who is he? The chief stepped forward, voice tight. That's Major Elijah Caldwell, Delta Force. Retired, former strategic lead at Fort Bragg, and husband to the defendant. Silence rippled through the courtroom like a dropped glass. The judge looked over the rim of her glasses at Elijah Caldwell. Your Delta Force? Elijah didn't nod. He simply said, Yes, ma'am. Wexler was now rigid in her seat, blinking fast. One of the younger officers near her leaned in and whispered, Wait, like Black Ops Delta? Elijah walked toward Nia. Each step was calm but unignorable, like a storm that hasn't broken yet, but owns the sky. He stopped beside her. You all right? Nia didn't speak, but her eyes, tired, full of things she hadn't said, met his. He took her cuffed hands in his and turned to the judge. With respect, I'd like to address the court. The judge shifted. Are you licensed counsel, Major Caldwell? I'm not here as a lawyer, he said. I'm here as a citizen who swore an oath to defend this country, including my wife, from injustice. The prosecutor tried to interject. Objection. This isn't a military tribunal. But the chief raised a hand. Let him speak. A ripple moved through the benches. Even the stenographer leaned forward slightly. Elijah gestured toward Nia. She was arrested for questioning an officer, not threatening, not obstructing, for asking a legal question in public in daylight. And what followed? No Miranda, no call, no record review. That wasn't about law. That was about power. Wexler shifted. The defense lawyer was now fully alert. This isn't about just one bad stop, Elijah continued. It's about how racism operates under policy, about racial bias that hides behind phrases like resisting and escalating in tone. My wife has a doctorate. She treats veterans with PTSD, and none of that mattered because someone saw her skin before they saw her humanity. He turned to the judge. I've led missions that required every ounce of control a man can summon, but today I'm not asking for control. I'm asking for accountability. The judge didn't speak, but the room shifted. The prosecutor cleared his throat. We'd be open to a dismissal if... No, Elijah said. You don't get to erase this like it never happened. Nia spoke softly then. We want a formal record, not a favor. Behind them, Wexler rose suddenly. I followed protocol. She was obstructing. She raised her voice and... The chief held up a hand. Lieutenant, sit down. Wexler's jaw clenched. You're seriously letting this... Sit down. She sat. The judge finally leaned forward. Miss Caldwell, do you wish to proceed with a countersuit or formal complaint? Nia looked around the room. She saw how some of the officers avoided her gaze, how others looked shaken. Not out of guilt, out of fear. I want it all in the record, she said. The booking, the hold, the quote-unquote tone. I want to know how many other women have sat in a cell for asking a question. The defense lawyer finally found his voice. Your Honor, this is becoming a systemic grievance hearing. Good, the judge said coolly. Maybe it's time we held one. Outside the courtroom, the reporters were already waiting. Someone had leaked it, maybe the chief, maybe a clerk. Wexler exited quickly, shoulders hunched. A young black reporter with a mic stepped forward. Lieutenant Wexler, did you slap Mrs. Caldwell? No comment. Did you use the phrase, you people, before arresting her? Wexler pushed past. Elijah and Nia emerged seconds later. The crowd surged forward, but Elijah lifted one hand. Nia stepped to the mic calm, controlled, poised. I was arrested for speaking clearly. I was held for obeying the law. This is what systemic racism looks like when discrimination wears a badge and prejudice is processed like protocol. It's not about one cop. It's about a system that allows it. A journalist asked, what happens now? We pursue truth, she said. Not vengeance, but truth with consequences. That's how transformative justice begins. As they walked to their car, Nia whispered, I'm tired, Eli. He nodded. Then we make them wake up. The panel room was silent except for the creak of a leather chair as Nia took her seat. She didn't dress for pity. She dressed with precision. Charcoal slacks, soft green blouse, her natural curls pinned high. A quiet declaration. She wasn't here to be small. Across from her sat the Internal Review Committee, 3 men, 1 woman, all white. The youngest one didn't make eye contact. The oldest fiddled with his pen. Dr. Caldwell, one began, we've reviewed the arrest documents and certain lapses in protocol. Lapses, Nia repeated. Is that what we're calling racial profiling now? A pause. The woman on the panel leaned forward. We're trying to get clarity. You mean control? Nia said. You want me to be polite while you assess how much harm is acceptable. You want to quantify humiliation. Let me help you. I was handcuffed because I asked a question. I was processed like a threat because of my tone. I was struck by an officer who felt her authority slipping. That's not a lapse. That's a system functioning exactly as it was built. The youngest member finally looked up. What outcome are you hoping for? Change, Nia said. Not just for me. For the women whose names you never wrote down. For the civilians who didn't have a husband with clearance. For the people who don't survive your silence. That night at home, Elijah found her sitting on the porch, eyes on the horizon. They'll try to spin it, she said. They already are, he replied, but they're losing control of the narrative. She looked at him. What happens when truth threatens their comfort? Elijah smiled faintly. That's when it starts working. The next morning, a formal complaint was filed by a city employee, a clerk who'd seen the booking logs. She claimed Wexler often cited noncompliance when interacting with Black citizens. 2 days later, a Latino driver posted footage of Wexler calling him aggressive for asking why he was stopped. The video went viral. A retired officer came forward, anonymously. "She targets people who don't shrink," his statement read. "She provokes until she can punish." The mayor released a statement about reviewing patterns of behavior in the department, but the language was bloodless. Corporate. Nia felt the weight of it. "They're not sorry," she said. "They're scared." Elijah squeezed her hand. "Fear is a start." At the next hearing, Wexler finally showed up. Hair straighter than before, no makeup, blazer too stiff on her frame. She looked smaller. Not sorry. Just exposed. "I've been a respected officer for 15 years, she said. "I did what I thought was necessary under pressure." A black councilwoman interrupted. "Slapping a woman in handcuffs was necessary?" Wexler faltered. "She was uncooperative." She asked a question. "I perceived it as escalating." The room pulsed. That word, perceived, heavy with racial bias wrapped in polite diction. "She used a calm tone," the councilwoman said. "She didn't raise her voice until she was struck. What you perceived was her dignity." Wexler looked away. Outside the chamber, reporters circled. But Nia didn't speak that day. She let the silence speak for her. Back at her clinic, her patients had left letters. One wrote, "Your arrest reminded me why I stopped reporting workplace racism. Thank you for not staying quiet." Another said, "My son said you made him feel like we still matter, like someone's watching." And from the front desk assistant, "You walk in like you're carrying something bigger than yourself. I just wanted to say, I see it, and I believe in it." At home, Elijah was packing a bag for a brief assignment. "Where this time?" she asked. "Virginia. Just a review mission." "Come back whole." "I always do," he said, "but I'm leaving behind the better fighter." She smiled faintly. "I'm not a fighter." He tilted his head. "Nia, you're a mirror, and that scares people more." As he left, she opened her laptop and began drafting an essay. "How We Teach Authority to Fear Dignity, a Story of Bias in Professional Environments." She didn't call anyone out by name. She named patterns. She traced prejudice like a roadmap. She described HR stonewalling, the weaponization of tone, the corporate refusal to acknowledge internal discrimination. She ended with a call for transformative justice, for true equality in leadership, for minorities to stop proving their pain just to earn basic rights. And when she hit publish, the screen blinked, and the world somewhere shifted. She walked into the community forum with the same calm she used to walk into exam rooms, measured, listening, unshaken. The auditorium buzzed with tension, folding chairs creaking beneath restless bodies. At the front, Police Chief Ronald Dexter leaned into the microphone, blinking under the hot light. "We're here to listen," he said. From the crowd, a woman shouted, "Then why is she still wearing a badge?" Nia didn't speak right away. She watched Wexler 2 rows up, arms stiff, eyes dull. The officer didn't look repentant, just resigned. It wasn't guilt. It was strategy. A young black man rose beside Nia. "My nephew got pulled for doing 5 over. Ended up in cuffs for asking why. Don't tell me this is about training. It's about how you see us." Murmurs of agreement rippled. Chief Dexter cleared his throat. "Every complaint is being reviewed, but we must also support our officers under pressure." Nia stood. The room quieted. "My name is Dr. Nia Caldwell. I was cuffed, slapped, and processed for asking if a parking ticket had been correctly written." A woman in the back whispered, "That's her." Nia continued. "What I want to know is, what kind of system empowers someone to hit a black woman in front of her own child with no video, no reprimand, and still calls it protocol?" Dexter shifted in his seat. "We regret the incident." "No," she said. "You regret the attention." A pause. Then applause. Soft at first, then rising. Outside, reporters swarmed. Nia kept walking. One asked, "Are you planning to sue?" "I'm planning to expose," she said. The next day, Wexler's union rep made a public statement accusing the city of bending to social pressure. The tone was bitter, defensive. But something was cracking. In a private HR meeting, Nia was called to discuss a countercomplaint Wexler had filed, claiming Nia had verbally escalated the situation. The HR officer, a pale woman with a corporate smile, slid the paper across the table. "Is this a joke?" Nia asked. "We're obligated to document all allegations." Nia folded her hands. Did she list the slap as part of her defense? Silence. Then the HR rep murmured, "It wasn't referenced." Nia leaned in. "So she gets to rewrite it." "I see." The woman shifted uncomfortably. "This is procedural." That's what they said in 1955, and 1963, and 1991. You're not following procedure. You're protecting the system from reflection. That afternoon, another story broke. A former dispatcher admitted she'd been told to keep things internal whenever Wexler's name came up in use of force incidents. Anonymous tips began flooding the review board. One included timestamps, dates. Another included a memo from 5 years ago. Wexler needs coaching on tone with minority residents. Buried, ignored. Now exposed. The city released a statement. Defensive, clipped. We are cooperating fully with the investigation. But then something unexpected happened. The chief of police, Dexter, resigned. And a temporary interim chief was named. General Elijah Caldwell. It wasn't a PR stunt. It wasn't a token gesture. It was the beginning of a reckoning. In the courtroom, where Wexler was now facing a formal disciplinary hearing with public access, the energy had shifted. The judge, a black woman with silver braids and courtroom eyes that didn't blink, called the room to order. "Ms. Wexler," she said, "you've been accused of misconduct. Your department failed to document repeated instances of disproportionate responses involving minorities. Today, we are no longer whispering about selective enforcement." Wexler looked at her attorney, then at the crowd. And then the doors opened. He entered wearing the uniform he hadn't touched in 5 years, except funerals and flags. Delta patch visible, chest high. And as Elijah walked past the bailiffs, the chief of internal affairs stood. Then saluted. A hush fell. Wexler's face crumpled just slightly. Nia remained seated, her posture still, her gaze calm. The judge spoke again. "We are not here to discuss your marriage, General Caldwell." "No, Your Honor," Elijah said, "but we are here to discuss power. And when power forgets its purpose, men like me are asked to step in." No one spoke after that. And for once, Wexler didn't try to justify her actions. Because this time, silence wasn't protection. It was sentence. The courtroom emptied slowly, as if the air itself had thickened. Reporters didn't swarm like they used to. They stared. Wexler remained seated at the defense table, unmoving, her face blank but pale. Her lawyer whispered something into her ear, but she didn't nod. She didn't blink. Nia stood calmly, her purse looped over her shoulder. She didn't look at Wexler as she walked past her. She looked at the bailiff who had once gripped her arm too tightly. She looked at the gallery where mothers and daughters sat whispering things like, "That's her," and she stood tall. Outside, Elijah walked a few steps behind her. "You didn't have to wear the uniform," she said softly. "I wasn't going to," he replied. "But then I thought, let them feel what fear looks like when it comes with honor." She didn't smile, but her eyes shimmered. That night, news segments dissected the hearing. One anchor used the phrase selective brutality. Another called it a haunting example of racial bias in uniform. Twitter trended with hashtags, hashtag systemic racism, hashtag justice for Nia, hashtag power accounted. But back inside the precinct, Wexler sat alone in a conference room. Her fellow officers didn't check in. Some avoided her completely. Others stared like she was something contagious. Lieutenant Barnes walked in eventually, not to offer support but to slide over a notice. "Mandatory administrative leave," he said. "I thought I had support," she muttered. "You had silence," he corrected. "That's not the same thing." She opened her mouth to respond, but he was already gone. Meanwhile, at a roundtable panel hosted at the local university, Nia took her seat beside a civil rights attorney and a former state judge. The moderator, a sharp woman in a rust-colored blouse, welcomed her with open admiration. "Dr. Caldwell," she said, "how did you keep from exploding in that moment?" Nia gave a small breath. "You don't survive injustice by matching its volume. You outlast it with clarity." A student raised his hand nervously. "Do you think things are actually going to change? Or is this just another cycle of outrage?" Nia met his eyes. "Change is a mountain, but each time someone stops pretending the ground is flat, we get closer to the summit." The room was quiet. Then applause. Later that week, the city released a report confirming 5 years of ignored complaints, all involving the same 3 officers, including Wexler. The report didn't try to spin the findings. For once, it was raw. Pattern of racial bias in enforcement procedures. Failure to discipline. Culture of silence. The mayor held a press conference. "We're not here to perform outrage. We're here to restructure authority." Nia wasn't present. She was home, sitting with her daughter Amari, braiding her hair. "Are they going to fire her?" Amari asked quietly. "I don't know," Nia said. "But even if they don't, she's already lost what she used to hide behind." Her badge? No, baby. Her belief that she'd never be questioned. Meanwhile, the police board prepared to meet for a final internal vote on Wexler's termination. In the break room, officers debated. She made a mistake. She made 5 years of them. Y'all just scared you're next. But the voices were no longer all in agreement. Some leaned against the wall, thinking. Some avoided eye contact. Some looked at the TV screen replaying the court moment, the salute to Elijah, the way the courtroom went still. And then the board voted. Termination. Effective immediately. No pension. No reassignment. No appeal. At her locker, Wexler stared at the metal nameplate. She ripped it off and threw it in the trash. Outside, no one waited for her. But across town, at the community center, a new program was launching, one focused on justice education for youth. Sponsored by the city, led by Nia, and funded quietly by Elijah. He said only, "Let them learn what truth looks like before they learn fear." Inside the center, on the first day, Amari raised her hand and asked the question no one expected. "How do you stop being afraid of people in uniforms?" Nia placed her hand over hers. "You don't have to stop being afraid. You just have to know your worth doesn't shrink in front of their badge." And from the back of the room, a teenage boy whispered, "Damn, that hit." Until one night, Malik received an email from a burner account. "I panicked. That's not an excuse. I know what I did. I ruined everything. You don't have to forgive me. Just needed you to know I know." No name. No sign-off. Malik didn't reply. In class, he studied hard. Never late. Never loud. When someone scoffed at his questions, he simply nodded and kept going. One day, during a practical drill, a fellow trainee panicked while checking a pulse. Malik placed a steady hand on the trainee's shoulder. "Breathe. Count it out. Don't rush the beat." The instructor watched from across the room. Later, she pulled Malik aside. "You've seen pressure before. Real pressure, haven't you?" Malik nodded. She smiled. "Good. That's what makes a medic." Outside the building, Rachel waited in a parked car. Grace was asleep in the back. She handed Malik a small box. Inside, a tiny pair of white baby booties, neatly folded. They're for her to remember who really brought her into the world. Malik's eyes didn't well up, but his jaw tightened. Then Rachel added, and I wanted to ask, if it's okay, could you be her godfather? Malik looked at the box, then at Grace, then back at Rachel. I'll protect her the way no one protected me. From the sidewalk, a woman snapped a photo, Malik gently holding the booties in one hand, his other hand resting on the glass beside Grace. The photo went even more viral than the footage. Headline: The baby he delivered, the man they ignored, the story that changed a town. And still, Malik said nothing publicly. He just showed up, quiet, consistent, ready. It started with a town hall meeting. The mayor had scheduled it to calm tensions, but the tension was already seated, in folding chairs and quiet stares. Whispers filled the corners like smoke. Malik sat in the back, hoodie zipped halfway, cap low. He didn't speak. But others did. One nurse stood up. I was there the night he came in. He delivered that baby. He stabilized the mother. We failed, not him. An older woman raised her hand next. My grandson said the boy taught him CPR after school. Y'all said he was trouble. And then Rachel entered. Not dressed up. No makeup. Just a clean white shirt, baby Grace in a sling across her chest. She walked to the mic. My husband lied. I was scared. But that boy, he was brave. He gave our daughter her first breath. The room held its breath. A few gasps. A chair creaked. Then someone clapped. Just one person. Then a second. Until the room filled with the uneasy rhythm of reluctant truth. The mayor glanced to his aide. The aide nodded. 2 days later, the town issued a formal statement. We recognize Malik Thompson's bravery and contribution to our community. But it didn't stop there. The EMT program posted a video of Malik leading a mock trauma scene. Calm, efficient, clear. Comments poured in again. This is who I want showing up when I call 911. He's got more poise than men twice his age. Meanwhile, Ethan finally resurfaced. A local podcast, small, gritty, known for its brutal honesty, gave him a slot. But instead of a redemption arc, Ethan unraveled. She just screamed, and there was blood. He was black and tall, and I thought, look, I just thought something was happening to her. The host didn't let it go. You mean to say your default was to assume he was a threat, even though your wife called for help? Ethan didn't answer. The clip was shared everywhere. It became a case study in implicit bias. Meanwhile, Malik remained silent. Until the fire station invited him to speak at their youth outreach night. He stood behind the mic in front of 20 black teens. I was 13 when I realized I could do everything right and still be seen wrong. He paused. But I also learned truth doesn't need a microphone. It just needs time. He didn't preach. He just stood there, tall, quiet, present. The room listened. Not because he demanded it, but because he'd earned it. The city held a ceremony. Not for show. For acknowledgement. Inside the auditorium. Light filtered through tall glass windows. People murmured softly. Some stood. Some sat still. A row of officials in suits. Rachel in the front with her baby. Ethan was not invited. Malik stood at the edge of the stage. Not on it. Just near enough to see. A woman stepped forward. Fire chief. Gray braid tucked tight. Eyes sharp. She held up a small red box. To the young man who acted when others froze. To the one who reminded us who we're supposed to be. Malik Thompson. Silence. A moment, then footsteps. Slow, measured. Malik walked forward. He took the box, opened it. A pin, a silver emblem, wings crossed with flame. Volunteer first responder. No speech, just a nod. But his hands, they held the box like it meant something more, something earned. Later that night, he stood outside the station. Cool wind, street quiet. The city felt different. Rachel approached. She didn't say much. Just, thank you, again. He nodded. She looked down. I left him. I'm staying with my sister. A pause. He said he doesn't remember it clearly. But I do. And so does Grace. She turned to leave. Stopped. Then whispered, she smiles every time she sees brown hands. Malik didn't speak. He just watched her walk into the dark. Next morning, his name appeared in the paper. Local teen saves mother and child, but it was the photo that mattered. Him, holding Grace. The hospital behind them. Sunlight catching the edge of the baby blanket. It spread. Fast. And in classrooms, firehouses, coffee shops, they asked the same question. Why did no one believe him? A week passed. Then another. A man in a suit came by. Tall, stern. FEMA cadet program? You were nominated. Malik blinked. I didn't apply. You didn't have to. He left that night for training. Didn't tell many. Didn't say goodbye. He just left a note on his bedroom wall. Taped beside his hospital wristband. And the photo. It read, what I do matters, whether they see it or not. Sometimes, the world won't recognize your worth. It'll call you threat when you're trying to save someone's life. It'll close doors even after you break them open. But the truth? The truth doesn't knock. It walks in, uninvited, undeniable, unapologetic. This wasn't a story about being saved. It was about standing tall, even when everyone looks down on you. It was about what happens when quiet courage meets loud injustice. Now it's your turn. Drop a comment. Tell us what you think Ethan deserved. Should Rachel have forgiven him? What would you have done? Like the video. Share it with someone who needs to see it. And subscribe for more real stories. Stories that challenge, heal, and remind us. Power doesn't always speak loud. Sometimes it whispers and still shakes the room.